Doubt, heartache, disorientation, uncertainty. These are the things at the heart of the Christian story. In fact, these are the things at the heart of the Christmas story. And I know you've probably read this story many times, or you've at least heard it many times. The Christmas story, the one we're talking about today, Matthew chapter 1. Joseph finding out Mary is with child. Jesus coming into the world. But see, the thing is, I think we have to constantly, all the time, reread this story. Reread it with a new set of eyes, new set of ears. Because is it possible that religious culture, church culture, has domesticated this story to such an extent to where it's no longer relatable? And so what I'd like to do this morning is reread the story with you. And I want to invite you to do it a bit differently. I want to invite you to close your eyes and just hear the story. Listen for doubt, heartache, disorientation, uncertainty. So I invite you to close your eyes at this time if you're willing. Matthew chapter 1, verse 18 through 25. And this is how the birth of Jesus Christ took place. When Mary, his mother, was engaged to Joseph, before they were married, she became pregnant by the Holy Spirit. Joseph, her husband, was a righteous man. Because he didn't want to humiliate her, he decided to call off their engagement quietly. And as he was thinking about this, an angel from the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife, because the child she carries was conceived by the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you will call him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." Now all of this took place so that what the Lord had spoken through the prophet would be fulfilled. "Look, a virgin will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel." Emmanuel means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did just as an angel from God commanded and took Mary as his wife. But he didn't have sexual relations with her until she gave birth to a son. And Joseph called him Jesus. You can open your eyes. Now see, oftentimes when we read this story, we tend to focus on the parts, all the elements in the story that are outside of our experience. I mean, we tend to focus on all the elements of the story that, if we're honest, we really can't relate to. Things like an angel appearing in the dream, a baby being born of a virgin, and prophecy being fulfilled. Interesting, right? We're focused on the parts we can't relate to. And a bit of history. In the first century world of Joseph and Mary, to be engaged would be like this legal contract. It would be binding in every way. And so in a very real sense, they were married without having yet consummated the marriage. And so when Joseph finds out Mary is with child, he can only conclude one thing: that there's been a bit of infidelity here. And so the pain, the anguish, the heartache, the sense of betrayal sets in. And can you imagine for Joseph? Man, Mary, this was supposed to be good. This was supposed to be a journey of joy. And look what you've done. And see, for Joseph in that time and in that day, there were two real options. He could publicly declare his injury, which would have meant Mary would be stoned to death, or he could dismiss, or a better translation, divorce, because it's a legal contract. He could divorce her quietly. And there's no telling how Mary felt in all of this. I mean, maybe you felt something like this before, where you know you're not lying, but it's actually better for you to stay quiet because no one's going to believe you anyway. And I'm guessing at this point, in her mind at least, the baby shower had been completely called off. And think about how the story ends, the last 2 verses. When Joseph woke up, he did just as the angel from God commanded and took Mary as his wife. But he didn't have sexual relations with her until she gave birth to a son. Joseph called him Jesus. Not exactly a joy bomb there, is it? The choir's not breaking out into some joy to the world after that line. I mean, there's better lines we could drop here if we want to do that. Do you hear the doubt, the heartache, the disorientation, the uncertainty in the story? You see, I started to notice something within myself several years ago. That every year, around this time, around the holidays, and I could almost tell you exactly when it would come and almost pinpoint it when it'll leave, but every year, this dark, ominous cloud would begin to move in, and the thing is, it wouldn't keep moving, it would just kind of linger and hover. And for a long time, it was really important for me to try to figure out why this was happening. Because if I could figure out the why, then I could dismantle this cloud and get back to the bright and get back to the happy. And if you know me very well, you know that the why is pretty important to me. Because our whys, they drive us, and they often move us forward in very powerful and meaningful ways. But there are times when that question of why can be the most unhelpful and most unhealthy question, and it can actually pull us backwards. And so this year, even before Thanksgiving, I decided I'm going to give up on that question. And when that dark cloud comes, and I'm not talking about a deep depression, I'm talking about a dark, ominous cloud that just kind of sits there. And when it comes, I'm going to acknowledge it, I'm going to see it, I'm going to name it, and I'm going to try to accept it, and that can be really hard. And see, I should also tell you that if I'm not careful, there's some guilt that creeps in on my part. Because I start to think, man, I'm a pastor. Come on, Ryan. Get your stuff together, man. You're a pastor. You're the one supposed to be proclaiming joy in this season. Come on, man. But you see, the more people I talk to, the more people I encounter. You all have very similar experiences. Not everyone, but many. Because the holidays just have a way of bringing up the loss, bringing up the grief. Or maybe in your family it has a way of bringing up the dysfunction. Or in your life it has a way of highlighting for you all the things you thought would be different in your life or different in the world, and yet they're still the same. In fact, I think it's why a rereading of Joseph and Mary is so important. To constantly reread it. To see them as real people in a real world dealing with real issues, real things. I mean, isn't it more true? Doesn't it resonate more? Rather than the Mary who's just kind of constantly smiling, always blushing, hands folded. And then you have Joseph, that super manly character who's by and large unaffected by these things and who just pushes on because he's the male family leader and he's going to just hold it together. I mean, come on. Does it ever feel like the religious experience is so difficult to relate to? And I should also be honest with you this morning. I'm aware that I'm speaking with you on the heels of heartache. You know, my parents flew into town from Florida last weekend, on Friday. And on Saturday morning, we got up, and we do this every year. It's become a family tradition. We went to the downtown aquarium to do the breakfast with Santa. And if you're a breakfast with Santa thing and you haven't been to the downtown aquarium, I highly encourage it, because they serve a really good breakfast, and Santa gets in the tank and does the scuba thing with the elves, and there's crafts and face painting, the whole 9 yards. A good time will be had by all. So we were getting done with our breakfast, and I was standing next to Mom, and she receives a phone call. And she walks away with her phone, and she answers the phone. And another moment later, I look, and Mom was collapsing against the wall in the aquarium. And she had just received the news that her baby brother had just passed away from a massive heart attack. 54 years old, healthy, no problems in the past. And you see, it's moments like these that come along and they remind us, a very poignant reminder that life is fragile. And as often as we say it, and as trite as it sounds sometimes, oh man, you never know, tomorrow's not a promise. But it's true, isn't it? You don't ever know. Tomorrow's not a guarantee. And see, moments like these, they serve as this very poignant reminder that life is a gift. And the breath you just took, it's a gift. And the breath you just took again, that's a gift too. And it's this reminder that if life is a gift for me and the ones that I love, then isn't life a gift for everyone else? And so in these moments, your senses are a bit more heightened. You become more aware. If you allow your heart to break open, you become more aware. And so when you read articles or turn on the news and you see stories like what's happening in the city of Aleppo, your heart breaks a little more. And you can't help but cry out to God and say, God, this seems so unfair. These are kids, families. And see, I don't know, maybe you're battling your own doubts today. Maybe you're battling your own heartaches. Maybe you're battling your own feelings of being turned around and completely disoriented from the things you were so familiar with. Maybe you're battling your own uncertainties. And see, the temptation always is to run from these things. Run away from these things and run towards some so-called Christmas joy. But I'm not buying it anymore. Because in my experience, it's not about running away from these things, but it's actually about running deeper into these things. And I'm absolutely convinced now that this is the place where the fullness of life is found. And if I can be so bold to say, this is the place where true joy is experienced. Oh, come on, Ryan. Come on, man. You're telling me running deeper into the pain, deeper into the heartache, deeper into my doubts, this is the fullness of life? This is joy? Yeah. This is the world Christ was born into. Born into all of Joseph's doubts, all his heartache, all his disorientations, all his uncertainties. This is the world Christ was born into. And I believe that Christ is still being born into this world today. When my mom was collapsed against that wall in the aquarium, that's the world Christ was being born into. And when another child is slaughtered today in the city of Aleppo, that's the world Christ is being born into. And when your most significant doubts come to the surface and you ask yourself, man, is this spiritual stuff even worth it anymore? Is this God path, is it even worth it? That is precisely the world Christ is being born into. One of my favorite philosophers and theologians, his name is Peter Rollins. I highly recommend all of his work, but if you want a good starting place, The Idolatry of God is a great book. In it, he says these words: to put this another way, what if Christ does not fill the empty cup we bring to him, but rather smashes it to pieces, bringing freedom not from our darkness and dissatisfaction, but freedom from our felt need to escape them? He's a philosopher, so you got to bear with him. He uses these big sentences, but they're profound. Listen. For in the figure of Christ, we are confronted with an atomic event that does not destroy the world, but rather obliterates the way in which we exist within the world. In concrete terms, this means that the darkness and dissatisfaction that make their presence felt in our lives are not finally answered by certainty and satisfaction, but are rather stripped of their weight and robbed of their sting. You see, the authentic spiritual path is not about moving away from, but it is about moving deeper into. And that path will lead you deeper into these things, all the way into them. Because you see, to be fully alive, we have to acknowledge all of it. All of it. Should I stay or should I go now? Aren't you glad Joseph stayed? In the moments of doubt, heartache, disorientation, uncertainty, stay present. Stay aware. Pray for a new awareness, because in this same world, there is joy. There is goodness. But if we're not aware, we miss it, don't we? We completely miss it. So I want to close with a story about Larry in Nashville. I was in the Raleigh-Durham airport on Wednesday because I was at my uncle's funeral. And I was in the airport trying to get home to Denver. And see, a family member hooked me up with a buddy pass on a certain airline. And so I made it through security and I got to the gate agent. And I was trying to figure out with her whether or not I should jump on the 7:05 nonstop flight to Denver, which was completely packed and it wasn't certain if I'd get on, or if I should jump on the earlier flight to connect in Nashville, which, by the way, this flight was running 30 to 45 minutes late, so it made for a tight connection. Last minute decision, I decided, with her help, to jump on the Nashville flight. And I was the last one to board the plane, and as I was boarding the plane, I was dragging my carry-on bag behind me. And there are no open seats, and the overhead bins are full. And at that moment, I turn around, and the flight attendant says, "Yes, sir, I'm sorry, there's one open seat there, but I'm going to have to take your bag and check it in for you. And what you can do is pick it up at your final destination," which is where? And I say, "Denver." And I watch her write D-E-N on the ticket. And I said, "Great." And I took my middle seat because it was the only seat there. First world problem. In fact, this whole story is first world problems. And I sit down, and I start to get comfy, and within about 15 seconds, I realize, oh, shoot. I got to get up. Man, I got to get up. I run to the flight attendant. I said, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I need that bag back." Because the lady at the gate, when she handed me my buddy pass, she said, "Hold on to this. You cannot lose or misplace this. It cannot be reprinted or reissued, and you will need this to get on your connecting flight in Nashville." And I said, "Ma'am, I'm telling you all this because what I'm saying is that ticket is in that bag that you just took. And my wallet is in there too." And she says, "Sir, I'm so sorry. You'll have to retrieve that in Denver." And I said, "Well, yeah, that's the problem. I won't be able to make it to Denver. I'm going to be stuck in Nashville." "Sir, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And so I go and sit back down, and I have this huge resentment going on because I'm fuming. And you know when you're working through resentment, it's everyone else's fault but your own. Oh, if she wouldn't have just taken my bag in such a hurried manner, I could have thought about what I needed. And if they would only build bigger overhead bins, this wouldn't be a problem. I mean, come on, people. And I'm working through this resentment. And about mid-flight, I finally give in to it, and I realize nothing can change. They're just going to have to fly my bag back later that next morning, and I can get an afternoon flight, hopefully. And you know, I thought, well, at least I can get something to eat in Nashville. Oh, that's right, I don't have my wallet. Well, I'll at least call Tammy and let her know the scoop. Oh, that's right, I got 9% on my phone, and I don't have my charger. And so I pray my Advent prayer, which I've been praying all of Advent. God, keep me aware. Keep me aware. And I was in one of the front rows, so I was one of the first to get off the plane. And when I stepped off the plane, there was a ground worker standing there, and he greeted me. He said, "Are you the one with the buddy pass?" And I said, "Yeah." And this is kind of creepy, right? Like, I have no clue how they knew who. In fact, if you work in the airline industries and you know the ins and outs, don't tell me. I just want to revel in this mystery. And so I say, yeah, and he opens the door going down the stairs to the wing, to the ground, and he shouts, "Larry, we've got him." And he asked me, he says, "Where's your boarding pass?" I said, "Top zipper." "Top zipper, Larry." He had my bag. I have no clue how he had my bag. Larry had my bag. And he opens it. He grabs the boarding pass, and he starts to run up the stairs to me. I said, "Dude, can you tell him I need my wallet too?" Same place. "Larry says he needs his wallet too." So Larry's running back down, then back up, and Larry gets to the top of the stairs, and he hands me my buddy pass and my wallet. We landed 30 minutes late, and he says to me, "You need to run because your plane is waiting for you." And you see, when I'm not aware, all Larry did was hand me a pass and a wallet, something I should have had before that flight even took off. But when I'm aware, I can see Larry's all over the world. I can see those small moments in the midst of the disorientation, the midst of the heartache. I can see those small moments of joy and goodness. Stay aware. Because this is the world Christ was born into. All of it. The doubt, the heartache, the disorientation, the uncertainty. And Christ was also born into the world of those small glimpses of joy and goodness along the way. Amen.